the Taurus G3c. Yes, Riders Range is a little late to the party. Seems like everybody and their uncle has reviewed the G3c at this point. Took us a while to finally get around to it, but we have some thoughts on it. We have some concerns with it, and we're going to talk about those, compare it with some other guns, and take it out to the range, so stick around. Welcome to Riders Range. Everybody's been raving about the G3c as a great budget pistol option, and it just took us a while to get around to finding one. Of course, this is in very late 2020. Gun buying has gone crazy. Trying to find any budget firearms on the market is pretty slim. I ended up finding this at a local store, ended up paying retail for it, which is right around $300, give or take, depending on where it is and what day it is, which really isn't too bad for a budget gun. And we'll compare it with a number of others later in the same, slightly higher price bracket, but not a lot. And a lot of reviewers have been comparing this with the G2c. I don't have a G2c, but just looking at the pictures and looking at other reviews, I know there are some subtle differences. And one of them, to me, is a concerning one. If you have a G2c or holsters for it, you may or may not be able to fit the G3c in those holsters, particularly if they're polymer holsters that are well fitted, because there is a difference in the contour of the slide in particular. However, if you're really hard up for holsters, leather in particular, you can make these fit in a Glock holster. Here's a DeSantis. Getting them out sometimes can be a little tough. You'd have to work it in. The easy one, of course, is this Don Hume belt slide holster. That'll fit Glock, and it'll very easily fit the G3c. So there are options out there. Generally leather would be the easiest, because you can make those work. Kydex are going to have to be pretty much fitted to that particular gun. But this isn't about the G2c, because again, I don't have one to compare it with. Strictly about the G3c. This is again a $300 gun roughly, with a matte black Tenefer finish and 3.2 inch barrel. This one has a safety. In fact, I think all of the G3cs have a manual safety on it. And that's one of the concerns that we'll talk about for two different reasons here in just a little bit. Another difference between this and the G2c is the G3c is cut for Glock sights. The G2c use proprietary sights. These use Glock, and it's just got a plain black sight, which I like in the back instead of the Glock bar type sight. And it's got a white dot front. Not fond of the white dot. I ignore that and just look at the black outline of the front sight anyway. But again, these are Glock sights, so you've got a lot of options in changing the sights on the gun. So this does have a loaded chamber indicator, but that's just a hole in the top of the barrel chamber area, just a sight hole like you're going to find on a Shield or a Sig 365 or something similar. It's not going to be the an actual lever type that pushes up like you're going to find on the Versa or on the Canik. So before we go on to comparisons, I do want to talk about the trigger. Trigger on this is nice in that the trigger safety tab, now again, this is a drop safety, and it's only a trigger safety in that it prevents the trigger from being pulled if something pushes on the side of the trigger. But if something gets in there, whether it's a drawstring on your hoodie or a flap of leather on your holster, it's still going to fire this gun unless you have the manual safety on. But this trigger tab does go flush with the trigger, which is nice. It doesn't protrude like it does on some other guns. I can shoot this thing a lot without getting what I would call Glock blister. And it has, when it's cocked and ready to roll, which is the condition it's going to be in when it's loaded, then there's a lot of take up before it starts overriding the internal safety. Just a very short, crisp wall and a little bit of over travel. See if I can make the over travel show up here. Just a little bit. Short, tactile, and audible reset. And again, a fairly nice pull. This averages out at around 4.5 pounds, which is actually pretty nice and pretty consistent. Now, this does have a double strike capability on it, even though it's a striker fired gun, not a hammer fired. That if the gun goes click the first time around, you can, in theory, continue to try to fire that round off. However, really, really bad training to do that. If the gun goes click, you want to be trained to get that round out of there rather than waste time trying to fire it again. So double strike capability, it is nice if you're using the G-Sight laser sighting system as a practice tool, that's very handy to just be able to continue to repeatedly pull the trigger on that. Right, but I do want to talk about the safety. Again, a manual safety, and some people will say, well, if you don't want to use a manual safety, well, just disregard it. And I can't subscribe to that theory, because if you're carrying this, and this safety, which, by the way, is not ambidextrous, but if the safety gets bumped up to the on position, and you haven't trained yourself to thumb that safety off every single time you pick the gun up, you could pick this gun up, and it's a brick. It's not going to do anything because you haven't trained yourself to work that safety down. So yeah, carry it with the safety off all you want, but still, if you're going to carry this as a defensive firearm, you need to get in the habit of thumbing that safety off as you're drawing your firearm, or at least as you're bringing it up on target. Again, I hesitate to think of what could happen if somebody's not trained to do that and this gun gets bumped up onto safe. Second thing about this safety, and this is pointed out by the Humble Marksman, and I didn't think about it until I saw his review, and that is, if you cock the gun, pull the trigger back part way, and activate the safety, the trigger is going to stay there. However, you'll notice the safety gun, by the way, this gun is empty. There is nothing in the magazine, nothing, and you don't need a magazine to work this gun. It's just more comfortable to hold it this way. And nothing in the chamber, so the gun's totally empty. So you pull the trigger back part way, you activate the safety, trigger's going to stay there, safe, right? Because you don't see the little red dot. And the answer is no, it's not. This gun will still get one activation of the striker, even with the safety on. So you need to be careful of that safety for two reasons. And again, to repeat, make sure that you always thumb it off. You have to have that habit when you shoot this gun or any gun with a manual safety. And be conscious of the potential for having the safety on with the trigger back, still being able to get one pull out of it. Other than that, I do like manual safeties. All right, so what about the weight of this gun? You know me and weights of carry guns. I'm kind of, I won't say weight sensitive, but I don't want to be carrying around a heavy brick all day, although I have carried full-size 1911s. All right, this one's empty magazine, empty gun, nothing in the chamber. And the gun itself, empty, 19.3 ounces. Add an empty magazine to that, you're going to come out to 21.9 ounces. Put a magazine full of 12 rounds, 124 grain ammunition, plus one more for the chamber, 13 rounds total. 27.6 ounces, still a nice, light, easy to carry gun. And again, these are 12-round magazines. Unless you live in a state that's not so free, then they're only 10-round magazines, but they're going to be the same size for the same gun. And the G3c does come with 3 magazines. Are you listening, Kimber? 3 magazines. Come on, they don't cost that much extra. And not just Kimber, several others. All right, so it's a portable gun. If you find the holster for it, easy to carry, and decent trigger, manual safety, which I like. But how does it compare to its competition? Well, again, this is around a $300 gun. Not much else in that bracket. Even if you go to something like a Smith & Wesson Shield. Now this is an early generation Shield. And this is an 8+1 in this magazine. So you got a total of 9 rounds versus either 10 +1 or 12 +1 in the Taurus. Price-wise, this is probably going to be your closest competitor. This is going to be around a $350 bracket for the Shield, so spend $50 more. Get a gun that actually has a little less capacity. However, the Shield is a little bit slimmer. Now this one has a Hogue handle junior grip on it, but with the 8+1 magazine in here, it's also a little bit longer than the G3c. Not much, just a little, and just a little bit slimmer. So you're going to spend a few bucks more to get the Smith & Wesson Shield than you will for the Taurus, and you're going to lose capacity in doing it. At just a little bit more than that, you've got a couple other options that are certainly viable options. One would be the Bersa BP9cc. However, you still have the same issue you have with the Smith in that it's an 8+1 capacity, although it is a much slimmer gun, and otherwise it's about the same length and about the same slide width, but the grip is certainly much slimmer, but that's because it's only a single stack 8+1. The Canik TP9 Elite SC, again empty. This one is a 12+1 also. It is just a little bit chubbier. Certainly the grip is just a little bit chubbier. Overall length is just a little bit more. This gun is still going to be around the $400 bracket, not including an optic, but it does come cut for optics, which is certainly a nice option in this. And the trigger on the Canik is really hard to beat. We did a review on that. I'll post it up here so that you can go back to the TP9 SC review, and that is really a very, very nice budget gun. Going up in price a little bit, you start hitting the $500 mark, and now you're in league with several guns, one of which is one of my favorite guns, one of the most accurate, most reliable guns that I've had. This particular one is the regular SIG 365. It is 10+1 as opposed to 12+1, but it does come in a smaller package. So if you live in a state where you can only get the 10+1 and the G3c, then for a little bit more, okay, yeah, we're talking in the neighborhood of $500 now for a 365, but that also gives you night sights. And this particular one also has a manual safety on, so you're going to work it the same way. And the trigger on this I do like a little bit better on the 365 than I do on the Taurus. Although I did have to put the Hogue handle grip on it in order to actually make it fit my hand. That grip is just too small. We did a review on the 365 and the 365 XL. I'll put a link up here to one of those somewhere along the line. And that does bring us up to a couple others in this price bracket before we go on to the XL. Certainly a perennial favorite. And again, 10+1 is the Glock 26. That's going to be around the $500 bracket also, although this one does have night sights on it, so it's a little more. And it's a little bit chubbier than the Taurus. It's a little bit fatter in the slide than the Taurus, just a little, and it's a hair longer than the Taurus. So again, you're going to get the 10+1 capacity, but you can also use Glock 19, Glock 17 mags. Put a 30-round stick in there if you want to, and you're still going to have the Glock trigger, but that's a whole different story. And another good option for around the same price is going to be the 43X. And again, you're going to talk roughly the same height, roughly the same width, and the slide's a little narrower, just a hair longer. Glock sights, of course, and a normal Glock trigger. And you'll say that, well, wait a minute, this is only a 10+1. Well, actually not when you use the Shield mags 15+1, not 10+1, in roughly the same size gun. And again, that's a $500 gun, not a $300 gun. And one more that I don't have that's going to be around the same bracket. It's going to be actually a 13+1 as opposed to a 12+1. It's going to be the Springfield Hellcat. But again, we're talking around a $500 gun for the Hellcat, although you can get those also with optics capability, which you can't get yet on the Taurus. And then that brings us up to my favorite, but again, higher price, is going to be the 365 XL. And again, we did a video on that one not too long ago. Again, this is optics capable, does have a manual safety. You know I like manual safeties. Again, had to put the Hogue grip sleeve on it. But this is a 12+1, more extended magazines to give you even greater capability. With the Hogue handle, it's just a little wider. Without it, the grip is just about the same size as on the SIG as it is on the Taurus. Lengthwise, roughly the same. There's just a little bit longer on the 365 XL. Overall profiles are really very, very close between the two. But again, we're talking a $650 gun roughly versus a $300 gun. So we've kind of gone out of the bracket. Range work is where I started to have the issues with this gun. Again, I had really high hopes for it. I took it out to the range initially, And you'll see on, we'll post some of the targets up here and some of the range footage when I gave it the very first shots using my standard 115 or 124 grain ammunition and shooting it at 15 yards, which is what I normally do at a 3-inch circle. And this gun was not patterning well, and it was patterning low left. All right, I'm used to guns not being on point of aim, but still, this was substantially low left. You can drift adjust the rear sight a little bit to move that to the right if you need to, but that doesn't help the up. The only way to move the sight, the shot group up, is to get a shorter front sight or a taller rear sight. And those weren't options that I was taking at the time. But even with that, the group was loose. I just wasn't happy with it. So we did take it over to the plates, and I wasn't happy with the performance of the plates. I wasn't happy at all with it at 25 yards and not at all at 50. Now, why do you want to shoot at 50? Well, you know, Rider's Range tests everything at 50. If the gun will ring steel reliably at 50 yards, then it's certainly going to be good enough for close-in combat. And here's why I did some more research on it and found that I wasn't the only one that was ending up shooting low or low left with this gun. The Humble Marksman said his was shooting low. The Honest Outlaw, and I really love the Honest Outlaw's range. If you haven't checked his videos, by all means go do it. But he was having trouble. Now he goes all the way out to 80 yards with some of his pistols, shooting at a fairly large silhouette, so he's got a large target, but he's also a really good shot. But he was having okay luck on a silhouette at 50 yards. He was struggling quite a bit at his 80 yards, and he even made a comment that his was shooting low left and was just not very accurate. So dug into it and did some more research, and Ransom, the company that makes the Ransom Rest for accuracy and load testing of firearms, actually did an extensive test with this gun, and they determined that, not unlike most pistols, this one is ammunition sensitive. They found that it had best accuracy with heavier bullets. So in an attempt at redemption on this gun, I did take it out to the range again. I also took it out with the 365 at the same time, and I ran both Federal and Blazer 147 grain ammunition through it, my go-to heavier loads. And lo and behold, when I ran the Blazer brass 147 grain 9mm through this, the point of aim actually picked up a little, and it actually tightened up the groups quite a bit. So I guess I don't feel quite as bad when I ran the right ammunition through it. Running the 124 and 115 grain just didn't get it. 147 is what this gun is going to like. And once we did finally settle in, I could actually hit steel at 50 yards most of the time. I did have to do quite a bit of holdover, however, because this gun, remember, does shoot low. In fact, the first shot that we took at 50 yards was aiming at the 16-inch plate at 50 yards and hit the 12-inch plate below it. In order to hit the 10-inch plate way over on the left on our 50-yard range, I had to hold so far over the plate. I couldn't see the plate. I had to pick a spot on the berm to aim at. But I could ring the 10-inch steel with it. And the fact that this gun has such a good gripping surface on it, at least to me, it's got the right stuff in the right places, made it real easy to hang on to and do quick shooting at 12 yards, again, as long as I remember to get the right hold on it, and solid shooting with repetitive shots at 50 yards. So this has good texture, and it's not all over, but it works in all the right places. Really assertive texture on the front and on the back strap. On the sides, it's not quite as rough, but still gets the job done. And of course, because it's an import, it does have the thumb holes right and left. Those don't bother me, but if you shoot with your thumb down there, just don't forget that safety when you come down off of it. And it does also have an index point for a thumb or trigger finger, depending on whether you're right-handed or left-handed. It works both ways. A good way to remind you to keep your trigger finger outside the trigger guard until you're on target, and a good place to put your secondary thumb. And again, when I'm shooting this gun, my thumb is holding that safety down just to make sure that it's not going to accidentally get bumped up, because have your thumb below it, and in recoil this gun you could activate the safety, and again, really bad habit. So you got a gun with a manual safety, ride your thumb on top of that safety. So good gripping surface, good trigger, and it's a very good price, particularly the fact that it comes with 3 magazines. and it did redeem itself with the right ammunition. I didn't run a 1,000-round reliability test. Enough other channels have done extensive shooting with this gun to know that they're generally reliable, although again, the humble marksman did have some trouble with his and ended up sending it back. We don't have enough ammunition through that to say yay or nay. However, I do have enough through it to be comfortable carrying it in a pinch right now. So that's the Rider's Range take on the Taurus G3c. Is it something that we would rush out and carry? No, I have plenty of other really workable, really good options, but they're pricier. If you've got a budget and you don't want to spend more than $300 on a gun, then this is certainly a viable option. 10 plus 1 in the non-free states, 12 plus 1 everywhere else. Good trigger, decent carryable weight, watch the safety, and let's see, you can swap your Glock sights on. It does have sort of a carry melt to it. Does have front cocking serrations, good rear cocking serrations that are good and assertive, not hard to rack. No, and I forgot to mention it does have a single slot Picatinny rail on the front if you insist on carrying a light or hanging something else from the front. Oh, I didn't mention the magazine release is easy to get to. The magazines do come out quite easily. Non-ambidextrous, it looks like you might be able to swap it. I didn't read the directions on that. Comes apart like anything else. So for $300, if that's the limit of your budget, or if you've got $500 and you can buy a $500 gun and no ammunition, or a $300 gun and a couple of boxes of ammunition, the Taurus G3c may just be the way to go. And so if you like this video, we do appreciate a thumbs up. We appreciate it if you share these videos however you can to help Rider's Range continue to grow. If you haven't already done so, please subscribe, click on the notifications bell so you know what's coming up next on Rider's Range. So comments down below on this video are highly appreciated. The more comments we get, the better it helps us in the YouTube algorithm. Comments on anything else, put it to info@ridersrange.com. So that's our look, kind of a longer look than you had probably anticipated, but we had a fair amount to cover on this one. I do want to thank you for visiting Rider's Range.